Hi, and thanks for watching. In this video, we're going to look at the subtle strategies of Xingyi. Xingyi being one of the internal martial arts, Chinese martial arts. When I'm talking about the subtle strategies, I'm referring to not just the training methods, not just the applications, but to some of the underlying concepts and ideas that form basically the spirit of the tradition. First, we'll talk a little bit about what Xingyi is. Then we'll take a look at some of this understanding around what do I mean by subtle strategies, and then look at the characteristics of Xingyi, the different key points in the training that give us a hint as to what these subtle strategies might be. So first, let's look at Xingyi itself. Xingyi is one of the internal styles, so technically related to something like Tai Chi and Bagua. Is grouped in the same category, though its appearance appears to be very external in terms of its characteristics. So just the opening of the linking routine. So it has characteristics that seem very closely aligned to something like Wing Chun or karate. It has a very upright stance. It has a very direct, snappy, assertive, aggressive characteristic to it. The moves are not showy or not flowery. And a lot of the initial techniques and training and strategies that are embedded in Xingyi lend itself to this idea of being extremely assertive, always driving forward. There's an idea that the best defense is a good offense, strike with full body power. So all of these things are characteristics of Xingyi. Though what I want to bring out in this video is that that initial impression, while correct at the surface, underneath that there is some of this, what I'll call deeper strategies, more subtle approaches that are actually building the foundation that are important for a student to understand. So, when I'm talking about deeper strategies, part of this is informed by my idea that all martial arts are actually about conflict resolution. Resolving conflict both externally but also internally. And each tradition has a different set of ideas on how to do this. Sometimes it's very clear and straightforward, just be faster, be stronger, be sneakier. But sometimes there's more to it than that in terms of the underpinning spirit of the tradition, especially for ones that are in the internal styles. The internal styles compared to the external styles, how I distinguish them is, first, you have to be able to distinguish between fitness and health. The external styles rely on training and building up your fitness level. This is similar to most sports, where the better your fitness, the better you'll be able to perform with that tradition. Anyone who's done any overtraining will understand that it's entirely possible to be working on building up your fitness and at the same time actually have your health decline. And so the distinction that internal styles make is that their foundation and training is building on cultivating your health. This is why the training techniques are different. This is why the learning curve is slower sometimes. Actually, what's interesting about Xingyi is one where the learning curve is actually quite short, very similar to an external style. But the training methods and the underpinning ideas behind it are fundamentally different. And so this leads to, when we're looking at this idea of the spirit of it or these subtle strategies, to a slightly different perspective. So with Xingyi, let's look at some clues as to what this slightly different perspective might be. There's 4 things I wanted to look at in this video. First is simply the name, Xingyi. Xing means shape or form. Yi means intention. Bring these two into alignment to have effectiveness. This is the idea of full body power. You are striking, but you're not striking just with your arm. You're striking by launching the whole body through and lining your intent with the full body as a single unit. The only additional detail we need to appreciate with this is that the meaning behind intention, yi, in Chinese is different than the English word intention. The two are very similar, but they don't quite line up. There's an additional meaning to yi. I've mentioned this in a previous video where you look at the character and how the character is formed, and it's actually a combination of two characters that are combined to make a new character. The combination is of the word for the character for tone and the character for heart. And so I've been told that it has two distinct meanings. One is the sound that heart makes, sending it out into the world. But also at the same time, it is sound coming into the heart and causing the heart to resonate. So it's not simply intention going out, but it's also awareness coming in, and it's actually the relationship between these two things. That is what yi is. So what it means is that what we're lining up with our form and our shape is this awareness of ourselves in relation to the conflict. So that's our first clue, that there's something a little more subtle, a little more detailed, that's nuanced, that's going on here. The next thing I wanted to look at is its relationship to the characteristics of spear. Chinese martial arts, many of them have borrowed from the characteristics of traditional weapons. So Tai Chi related to the sword, Bagua related to the saber, and Xingyi is this relation and characteristics to the spear. Obviously, the spear is a weapon where the attack is very linear. It goes straight out and comes back. But it's important to note that the Chinese spear is made from white mulberry, or the waxwood, which is a springy material. It's actually a whole tree, right, with the side branches lopped off. So it is a single, once living thing. And it borrows on those characteristics. This is important because it's not just a stick of wood. It's something that has a certain springiness, a certain aliveness to it. And that characteristic is put to advantage in spear technique. So the spear does not simply just get swung around and thrown out and come back. But the spear technique requires that the movement has a spiral. The spiraling creates a dynamic that makes, instead of just a simple linear movement, into one that is dynamic and alive. That is also a requirement for Xingyi, for the Xingyi techniques, say the Zhuan, the drill. It has this upward coiling motion followed by an uncoiling, coiling and uncoiling. All the other techniques, even the Beng Chuan, which is just a straight strike, even the straight strike has a coil to it. The third characteristic that adds extra awareness of the subtleties of Xingyi is the footwork. Most of the footwork is about driving straight forward, landing the forward drive and being prepared to launch immediately. But even there, the very first routine a student will learn, the linking form, after they've learned the 5 fundamental strikes or 5 fundamental fists, is the linking form, which in its very beginning sequence is not just driving forward. The linking routine has, right at the beginning, second step footwork Second set of footwork is a retreating strike. So it's not just driving forward, hell or high water. It also involves the possibility of setting back to launch yourself out again. And then the fourth characteristic I wanted to highlight, of course, is the stance training. The stance training is a fundamental part of Xingyi, which involves the Santi Shi, which is a static training, forming the body as like a wedge. Weight is set back like a spring, ready to launch the person forward, but also being braced with the front leg, making it possible to drop back. Both forward motion and back motion can happen very efficiently. And of course, in the stance training, you are prepared for moving forward or back, but neither of these things is done. You are at a state where you're prepared to respond in a moment's notice, without any hesitation, without any anticipation, during the stance training, knowing that that moment doesn't come. So, how do we tie these together in terms of an idea of what are the subtle strategies that underpin Xingyi? To my mind, there's two aspects of it. Both of them are very important, very interesting, very unique. One is an understanding of the dynamics of conflict, that there's a moment at the beginning when intention and form are not yet aligned. The intention is there to do it. The opponent has an intention to attack, but they're still getting prepared. Right? There's that moment. That is a moment when you can effectively intervene. There's a moment when the attack comes, when intention and form are lined up, united, full body power, for example, in Xingyi. And then there's a point where the attack has finished. The strength of the force, the strength of the form is starting to recede. The intention is still there. It has yet to form a new intention, a new approach, a new strategy. That also is an important moment in the pattern or the cycle of conflict. These 2 points are the points where, if you can understand and sense them, you can effectively intercede or defend yourself. And then, of course, understanding within yourself the same dynamic, you know how to time your positioning, time your techniques, so that you can find that moment where intention and form line up for your advantage. So this first idea of understanding the dynamic of conflict and being able to sense when intention and form are not in alignment, when they are in alignment, and when they fall out of alignment is essential to the overall training. And the second key characteristic is the idea of timing. And of course, it's closely related to the previous idea of knowing this pattern, but being able to time your responses is the other crucial thing, which is pretty much summarized with the very first exercise, the Santi Shi. I was talking to someone who is a hunter. I'm not a hunter, but I was asking him about that experience, what he found so compelling about it. It wasn't the killing. It was being out in nature, of course. It was this state of being fully present and aware. Because with hunting, you are waiting still. And you are waiting for the moment when your target is in range. If you act before that, you will not succeed. If the target comes into range and you hesitate, you will also miss your opportunity. The state that you need to be in is one where you are patient but constantly ready. And so this is the training that Xingyi provides. This is the underpinning strategies of Xingyi that can inform the training and then help work towards all sorts of different styles and situations where you need to resolve conflict, both externally and internally. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.